I'd like to talk to you about a film. It's a little short film called Diverted. It's by the National Autistic Society. And it covers one of the biggest effects of autism, that's sensory overload. Now, sensory overload works on two ends of a spectrum. It works on too much sensory overload where you're overstimulated, and it also works on the other end of the spectrum, sensory overload where you're understimulated. One of the things that me personally as an autistic person finds the most difficult is environments where there are too many things going on at once. If, for instance, you're a neurotypical person, I mean, not all neurotypical people will find this easy, but most neurotypical people will say go to like a big shopping centre. And when they're in the shopping centre, they'll hear only what they want to hear. So they'll hear either the person talking to them that's right next to them, or they'll hear an announcement coming over the loudspeaker, or they'll hear a little bit of background noise, but that, kind of blurs into a sort of dullness. When you have autism, you hear every single sound. So if I walk into a shopping centre, I'm immediately going to be hearing a cleaner, 300 metres away, cleaning the floor. I'm going to hear every child making a screeching noise. I'm going to hear most people's conversations. I'm going to be, tuning into their conversations. I'm going to hear the air conditioning. I'm going to hear doors opening and closing. I'm going to hear all sorts of stuff all at the same time. And this can be incredibly stressful, incredibly overwhelming, because when you're autistic, you don't have the power and the capability necessarily to shut off certain sounds and noises. And that's where stimulation comes in. And that's why I think this little film is really, really good, because it actually gives a little bit of a representation, both visually and audibly, to what it's like to feel sensation or sensory overload. If you've got anybody in your family, a child or a relative who suffers from sensory overload, if you watch that film, it gives you a really good insight into what they're experiencing all the time. And by arming yourself with that knowledge, you will probably be more likely to be thinking about putting things in place to help them. So for instance, with my daughter, first of all, I just avoid taking her to busy places. That's the the easiest sort of fundamental way of avoiding sort of meltdowns based on sensory overload. But if she absolutely has to go, say for instance, she needs to get shoes and she needs to buy them, she needs to try them on before we buy them. What I'll do is I'll just be aware of surroundings. So I'll first of all be aware of how she's behaving. So if I start to see her, acting up, then I know that that's potentially the beginnings of a meltdown. So I'll just explain to her, I'll say, look, I know right now you're struggling. I know right now that you're feeling like it's a little bit overwhelming. I understand. We will go in there. We will be as quick as we can. We will choose the shoes and we will get out. And we won't be buying other things. If I'm taking her to Tesco's and getting Tesco's school shoes, I won't be then going and getting some bread or milk. I'd be in there, get the shoes, pay it self-serve, get out. Avoidance is always better than cure. And that, applies to meltdowns in general, no matter what the cause is. If you can avoid a situation that causes the meltdown, then you've won to a large degree. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, preparing the world for somebody who has autism. Try and prepare it in such a way that avoids situations that can really cause them a lot of distress. And sometimes you forget, so it's even worth writing down, cataloguing meltdowns. Say, such had a meltdown at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we were in X place, and just pay attention to your surroundings and say, well, there was maybe an alarm going off at the other end of the store, or there was a big crowd, or he or she was particularly hungry. All these little things build up a picture, and if you write them down, you might start to notice patterns. So I've found that that's a really, really effective way to prevent meltdowns and to really key into why they happen in the first place. But brilliant film by the National Autistic Society, which is, by the way, a charity that I really, really support. They're really, really, really good. So if we can build up a list of these charities, which are not autism speaks, and actually really, really, really effective, and spend their money sensibly and help a lot of people, then great. National Autistic Society, they have a playlist which I will link two in the description as well, which is more than just this feature video. It's quite a few other little shorts, so watch them if you haven't had a chance. And as always, communicate with me in the comments. You know, if you want me to talk about any particular subject, if you want to ask any questions, then by all means I will. If you feel like you want to buy me a cup of coffee just to support the channel, that would be absolutely brilliant. The link for that is down in the description too.